Okay, so I haven't done a quick tip this week. It's been a busy week. It's week 3, and I wanted to get a little bit in. We're talking about research this week. We're talking about planning, which are obviously two very, very important components of PR. And I'm going to go to share screen. The idea of research might seem a little odd. Why would PR need to do research? What do they do with all of it? And research is used for a lot of different reasons. It's an extremely valuable function. I know a lot of people sometimes think it's boring, going through school. We have to do a lot of research for papers and stuff. I know when I was in grad school, we would write, I think, 4 to 6 papers every week for 18 months. And you had to research all kinds of things. And you're sitting at a computer and you're cruising the internet and getting information, but there's a lot more than that to research, because you have to engage with your publics and you have to find out what's going on in the minds of the publics and how do they view this and how might they view that. And there's a lot of interesting work involved in research. It's not nearly the boring thing that some people initially think it is. So once you've done all your research, what in the world do we use it for? Well, it's used in a lot of different ways. One is you achieve your credibility. And in public speaking, we talk about this a lot. You want to make sure you've done your research, and you want to make sure that your audience knows that you've done your research. That tells them that, hey, this person has done their due diligence. They do know what they're talking about. And public relations is no different. You've got to go out, do your research, find out, how does the public feel? The public that you're, not the public out in the world, but whichever public it is that you're doing research for, that's tied to whatever program you're currently working on. What are their feelings about it? What's their perception? What do they like? What do they dislike? The more you know up front when you're talking to those publics, they see, hey, they do have a good understanding of what's going on. I've seen companies that have said, hey, we've done some research and we know we've got some areas where we need to improve. We need to improve here. We need to improve there. Automatically, their credibility goes up because, hey, they took the time to find out what is their current status, what is their current position, how are they doing in something, but also they understand where their weaknesses lie and where they need to improve. That makes publics feel more comfortable with the PR function. So we do it to achieve credibility. Sometimes you'll do it to define your public. Sometimes in doing research for a project, you might learn about a public you hadn't even thought about. You didn't even realize they may be a public. Probably in the chapters in the previous weeks, when we talked about publics, you were probably thinking, oh, I never thought about that group as being public. So a lot of people forget that stockholders are a public, or that board members are a public, or employees are a public. That's not, when you think of public, you think of customers or potential customers or the public in general. And there's a lot of different publics. So sometimes the research is, what publics does this project we're working on affect? You also obviously will use the research to create your strategy. And that's the next phase, is the planning. You've got to know what it is you need to do. What do you have to cover? What do you seem to have covered? The public knows a lot about this particular thing, so you don't have to educate them or inform them on it. They already can know that from your research. So that helps you take your strategy from, oh, I don't need to talk about this particular thing. Hopefully most of you have taken public speaking, and this sort of looks at the audience analysis thing we would do in public speaking. You have to understand your audience and what they know, and then you tailor your speech to meet that audience. So if your audience knows a lot about a particular subject, you tailor your speech to people who are already knowledgeable, as opposed to doing a speech for an introductory to a topic because they don't know anything. And that's the same thing here. We use all of this research to figure out what is our strategy, what is our next step, what steps do we need to cover in order. We also will test messages through research. I want to see, okay, if we, and movies do this a lot, they'll do a test run of a movie. I can remember years ago, my wife and I went down to Universal Studios Orlando, and they were still putting the Minion ride together. The Minion movie had just recently come out. And you could go get in line and test run that version of the movie. But what it entailed was you would sit down like you were really going to do the ride, and somebody would come out and tell you what was going on, and that you would encounter the ride. And then after that, they were going to come back out and do a survey. And so we would do a test run. It wouldn't be the full ride, it'd just be a section of it. And then they would come out and say, okay, what did you think of this? What did you think of that? And they're testing to see what changes they come up with. How's the reaction from the public? Movies kind of will do the same thing. They'll put test messages out there. Hey, what do you think about this particular character, this particular plot doing this particular thing? Oh, this is information we can use, and we change it. You will test how well the messages go over with people. You get a small group of people, for example, and say, hey, we're about to say this. This is how we're going to say this. What do you think? And so you build your overall long-term message by testing it out in certain areas. You also will do research to keep management in touch. Management makes all these decisions for whatever company you happen to be working with or for. The management doesn't always know what the publics think. And so PR's job is to go out and find out, what does the public think? What does this public think? What does this public think? And you go back and say, hey, this public looks at this as a positive, but this public over here isn't so sure about it. So we've got some work to do here. And it's a way of, as PR, you're doing two-way communication. You're responsible. Obviously, you're the hub of communication from the organization that you represent out to the publics. You do a reverse function also, and you're the source and the communication channel for all of the communication from the publics back to the upper management or the decision-making people. And so that's a key thing that we do with it. We also will do research to prevent crisis. A lot of times you want to test the waters and see, okay, there's a little thing going on here. There's a little problem with a product or something. How serious is it? Is it bad enough we need to jump in full throttle? Or is it something we can kind of manage, from a little bit further distance? And what's the potential for it to blow up and become a huge deal that we'll have to manage? We try to prevent crisis at all costs. And a lot of that is reading the publics that you're dealing with and how do they feel about it? Because really the publics define the crisis, you don't. And if you let something go too far to where your publics become angry with you, or they walk away from your product, or you drop in their minds as far as credibility and reliability and service and trust and all of that, you've got a problem. So you're constantly reading feedback from your publics in order to prevent any kind of a crisis from occurring. You also will do research to monitor competition. You've got an organization you work for, but they are competing with other organizations. The car companies, for example, are all doing this all the time. They're watching each other and relaying that information back. Oh, look, this company just released this product and the public is loving it. We need to jump bandwagon and find a way to do that from our standpoint as well. And so you watch what's going on with your competitors and figure out how to proceed forward from there. You will also a lot of times do research to sway opinion. You will want to first do your research to find out what's going on. And then, okay, we've got to address this issue. So you do the research on the issue and say, here's the problem. Here's how we see to fix the problem. We want you to come on board and help us to fix the problem, or come on board and support us in fixing the problem. And so we will use that as a persuasive tool. Also, obviously, you use research to generate publicity. In the textbook on 128, there's a thing about DoubleTree and their cookie. And they give cookies out whenever you check in. And they actually put that sheet together to talk about the importance of the cookie. And to they want to equate the warm comforting nature of the cookie with the warm, comforting nature of a DoubleTree stay, right? And so to generate publicity about the cookie, they put out these flyers, and people are like, "Oh, you get this really special cookie." And then when you go to the DoubleTree Hotel and you check in, and they give you one of these special cookies, and you know all this information about it, you're actually generating interest back into the company. And organizations do this all the time in order to generate interest. You'll also, after you implement a plan, obviously the next step, and it's a key step, it's not one you can skip, you have to go out and find out how well did the plan do what we wanted to do. There's the goal that you have. Here's the plan that we have to achieve the goal. We implement the plan. Now, did we hit the goal? Did we fall short? Did we surpass? What's the public feeling about it? Do we need to go back and adjust? And so you measure the success of your plan based off of more research. So one of the key functions in PR is that research function. And if you're a really good researcher, really creative ideas and that kind of thing, this can be an excellent place for you to work. So that's the research function within PR. And I just really wanted to go over that real quickly. I probably went way too long because I usually talk too much. But there you have it. And I'm going to try to do another one on planning as well, because planning is a super critical function. But that's research. Hope you got something out of it. I'll talk to you later.